In 1988, it was my dad who had just come into the business right after my grandfather had started the company. And this has been the philosophy of my grandfather as well, that any new member coming in does not do what is already being done, but starts something under the Cello umbrella. We've always followed an approach of bottom up. We look at the bottom line first and then revenues, but we say no to more things than we say yes to.
Talk to us about some of these observations, insights from a consumer lens.
So I think Cello overall stands as a mass premium. Since the last 7-8 years, there has been a change in the kind of mindset of the customer and also the preferences that a customer has.
How has your customer responded and said that, hey, this is the kind of products we need, and how the company is structured? Like, what are things that you particularly take a look at? What were some of those fundamentals that you took forward in your business journey? How does the distributor network work? How do you, as a, for the lack of a better word, old company, behave like a new company in terms of talent?
I think in our category, it is the word that we're going to be using a lot.
Hello. Before we get started with this episode, I quickly wanted to share that we're now a part of the Zerodha Media Network. Thank you so much for watching.
Welcome to the Indian Silicon Valley podcast. I'm your host Jivraj, and today I have with me an incredibly special guest. This person has built one of India's leading consumer brands. I'm sure you've all heard of it. It's called Cello World. They do a lot of great products in kitchenware, a bit in stationery, and a bunch in molded furniture, and a bunch of these bottles of glass that you've seen, a bunch of these tiffins that you've seen, a bunch of these hot pots that you've seen. Join me in welcoming today the Joint Managing Director of Cello World, Gaurav Rathod. Thank you so much, Gaurav, for joining me.
Thanks a lot, Jivraj. It's a pleasure being here.
I'm so delighted to be hosting you because what you've built, what the family's accomplished, and how you're building the business, 18,000 crore market cap, top line of 2,000 crores, the scale is magnanimous. And a lot of founders today aspire to get to where you are already. So I want to take the next 60, 70 odd minutes to decompress all of your learnings. Where I want to start is, as a third generation entrepreneur, Gaurav, talk to us about what it's meant to come to a business that was briefly established at the time when you joined, almost a decade now it's been. And what was it like that back then? And how have things evolved? What are things like today?
Right. So I think it basically, of course, started about 3 decades back when my grandfather started it all. And then my dad, my uncle joined the business, and I recently joined about a decade back, which is still a decade, but seems a very short amount of time. So I think back then it's pretty well established. There were a lot of categories we were already in, whether it was stationery or the plastic houseware business. And post that, we actually sold the stationery business in 2015. I joined in about 2013-14. And so that was a great learning for me back then, because selling a business is also an art. So it's not just creating one, but selling also is something that I would have never experienced otherwise, right? So I think that happened, and post that we've just been in the building phase again, where we entered into the steel flask range. We got into cleaning product line, which did phenomenally well, by the way, post-COVID, because everyone started cleaning their homes. So that has done phenomenally well for us. And then, of course, glassware, which was my baby when I came into the business, because it had so much synergy with all our other product lines, whether it be kitchenware or other servingware. So we entered into the opalware segment, which is purely basically dinner sets and other crockery items. And I think that for me was a great learning. We established a plant of that scale for someone who had into the business was a great opportunity, at the same time a great task, right? So my father and my uncle placed great, they had great hopes from me, and hopefully it did very well.
Yes.
And it's now grown to a very good scale, and we are expanding further and getting into other glassware items like clear glasses, which we just put up a factory in Rajasthan for. So I think great going, and I think it's been a fantastic 10 years, and hopefully we've just started.
I'm sure. No, thanks ton for sharing that. The stock, of course, is delivering really well for a bunch of shareholders. You're now a public company, which feels like a different responsibility altogether. I want to understand how the IPO process was, but considering that, Cello is such a household name, yet it does multiple things on the background. Can you give us like a rundown of the different business lines, the different SKUs, and how the company is structured, like what are things that you particularly take a look at. I think that'll help with context, and then we can go deeper.
So I think when it first started I'll just give you a brief history because that'll help. So in 1988, it was my dad who had just come into the business right after my grandfather had started the company. Though Cello was something that we took over as a company. It was not, the brand name Cello did not belong to us as a family. But we took over a company. It was a small shop in a garage, literally. And my grandfather bought it at that point of time. It was in Bombay itself. It was a small little unit. Post that, my dad came into the business and started the houseware business. The plastic houseware business. And after that, my uncle joined the business and we started the stationery business. So it's always been, everyone, family member coming in and we start something new. And this has been the philosophy of my grandfather as well, that any new member coming in does not do what is already being done, but starts something under the Cello umbrella, which has really been great because it gives you the freedom. At the same time, the responsibility is also yours. So I think it's been great in that sense. So I guess these are the three people today. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away in 2020, and now we are three of us in the business. And so my uncle still takes care of the stationery product line. My father is looking into the plastic product lines and the furniture side of things. Though we have a full-time CEO in the furniture business, and we act as CEOs for our other businesses. And I take care of the glass business and also all the e-commerce side of the business and the modern retail and other formats. So I think I've been kind of instrumental in doing that over the last decade because these are the newer age kind of alternate channels that we've really grown in the past few years. Sure. So I think that's how we are split. So each one has his own business within the business, and I think that helps immensely because you have a clear vision from the manufacturing side, the selling side, the marketing side. Though some of the functions are common, marketing for us is slightly common where we all have a say. HR is common for us as a function. But apart from that, we literally work like three different companies. Though there is a lot of overlaps, we learn a lot from each other. We have our, every morning we have our chats. We all three sit together and kind of ponder on what's going to happen in the business. What are we going to do today? What are we going to do in 5 years? So all those plans are made, in the mornings when we just all enter the office. And this has been a norm since my grandfather, because he was the one who started it. Back then, we were a joint family, all living together. And we used to all go into his room. And if one of us was not there, he would kill us. But that, the kind of discipline that got us into was amazing, right? So I think that really helped us. And we have followed that tradition. And that's how, we look at the business today.
Well, that's super heartwarming to hear. I think these lessons just carry forward. Are there other distinct learnings that you've taken forward from the past generations, your grandfather, your uncle, your dad? What do those look like? Because new age entrepreneurship is a lot about speed, experimentation, hustle. I'm guessing the older generations were wiser to have more profitability. You're extremely profitable with a lot of bottom line growth. What were some of those fundamentals that you took forward in your business journey?
Right. So I think, yes, I was blessed in that sense that, it was, though there was hustle, I wouldn't say there wasn't, because starting something different. So glassware for me was a hustle because either I succeed or I fail, because it was new to the group overall. We were never into glassware. We did not know how it worked. So that, in that sense, there was a lot of hustle. But at the same time, of course, I had a lot of learnings that were there from my father and my grandfather, which were truly insightful, right? Without that, probably I wouldn't have succeeded in my first venture. So I guess those learnings are critical. We've always followed an approach of bottom up. So we look at the bottom line first and then revenues. So when you look that way, you are bound to succeed because you're not going to run out of capital in the first place, right?
Correct.
You are not going to be, going to investors just asking money all the time. And I think that is a lot of burden that is, set off your shoulders. So we've been debt free always, never taken debt in the company. And I think that in itself is a big boon, right? Not having to worry about paying back, your lenders. It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So I think you get a good night's sleep, and that's why you are able to perform better the next morning.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I think we've always had an approach of the fit of the product to the market. We've always been we hammer on those kind of ideas. We keep thinking about different ideas all around the year. Pretty much we come up with about 300 to 400 odd products across all our product lines.
Yeah.
So I think a pure sharp focus on the product, the innovation part of it, and the bottom up approach where every product by the SKU level has to be profitable. It's not that the overall business or an average has to be there. We look at the cost of each and every product. So even today, nothing goes by without me looking at the actual cost of a new product.
Oh wow.
And we go into detail on that, right? So if it doesn't make sense to us, or if it's at a lower margin, we would probably change some aspects of it and then launch it or not launch it at all. So there are a lot of iterations that keep happening in the products as well.
Yeah.
And some we completely say no to, even though a lot of time and energy is spent by our R&D and our product team, but we say no to more things than we say yes to. And I think that has been the fundamental reason why we are a super profitable or almost like leading in the industry, where our closest peers are about 10 to 11% lower EBIT margins.
Yeah, you guys are at like 24-25% EBIT margins.
Correct,
which are dreams for entrepreneurs today.
Right.
And I'm so glad that we hear from folks like you, which reinstores a belief that companies are to be built profitably and at scale. Now, Gaurav, let's maybe take a step back, right? And understand that you're selling a lot of kitchenware, a lot of stationery, a lot of bottles, multiple 300 SKUs you mentioned. What is the insight behind what sells? Right now, you've been in this business for so many years, but the Indian consumers evolved during that time. And in fact, since you have joined itself, right, the Indian consumer of 2014 is very different from the Indian consumer today.
Correct.
Talk to us about some of these observations, insights from a consumer lens, so that we can backward understand what the business stands for.
Sure. So I think Cello overall stands as a mass premium. It's always been that.
Okay.
But going, since the last, I would say 7-8 years, there has been a change in the kind of mindset of the customer and also the preferences that a customer has. So the customer before in India was a very functional based customer. So the function mattered, the aesthetic did not matter, the price mattered, right? So very, very super price conscious customers, back then we used to say that it's impossible to add any feature to any product because the customer is not going to pay for it. But that has changed dramatically over the past, I would say after COVID, even more dramatically, right? Yeah. And I think people now value aesthetics. They value a better product line. They value a better function. So I'll just give you an example. Before we used to sell, say, steel bottles or plastic bottles, and people used to be, because that was the function. Either you kept water in a plastic bottle or you carried a steel bottle, somewhere. So, but now what we started doing is we started adding a layer of insulation and do a steel inner and a plastic outer. So that kind of solved two problems. One is that a steel bottle kind of dents over time, right? And the plastic kind of helps to cover that problem. And at the same time, you insulate the bottle, so it keeps the water cold or hot for a very long time. So it solved for two purposes. Though the price rose basically because of the addition of this feature, the customer started paying for it.
Because they value it.
Because they value it. So there is a feature that you need to, an Indian customer doesn't value gimmicks. Even today, you can go sell anything in the US. It'll be a gimmick, it'll sell like crazy. Everything goes viral there. But in India, a customer is still very, rooted or understands the gimmick and they look through it. So I think you have to be very conscious of the value additions that you do in a product line. And I think that has really helped us kind of grow the hydration category multifold. And also at the same time, rise the ASP also has risen for that particular product line. So I think these are the kind of insights that we've been working with. Even when we started initially, when my dad went to the US first. So my grandfather at that particular point in time in 1987 this was, and he just sent him on a trip to the world, right? He said, go tour the world, get products, right?
Nice.
So, and he was a 17-year-old boy back then. And he went over, he bought something which resembles today's hot pot. And, but there was a problem there because inside they used glass. So glass in India at that particular point in time was a no-no because of our cleaning habits, the way we cleaned, because they were dishwashers already in the West at that particular point in time. So I guess what they started doing is he put a steel inner inside the hot pot and insulated it, so it kept it hot and cold. So the rotis and the chawal that we keep in the hot pot remained hot, right? Wow. So that was another customer insight that really helped us. Actually, that was one product line that put us on the map of being there as a consumer brand.
I love that. Those examples are really valuable. Just really goes to personify that you have to be customer first. You have to really look at the customer deeply. What was your insight with glassware? I'm guessing that in 2013-14, it was still early in terms of the trend, right? What did you capture and how have you seen that catch on? Was it an instant catch on with the customer, or have you had to educate the customer? What has that been like?
Right. So I think glass overall in the last few years has picked up for sure. And people have been shifting from pure plastic bottles and other things or even steel towards glass. Right. So there is some of that move that has happened, mostly urban, but that's a pretty exponential kind of a thing that has happened in the last few years. Having said that, initially it was tougher. We had to actually explain the product line. Had to educate the customer on the benefits of using glass. Though glass is not applicable, we sell plastic, steel, and glass, all of them, and all of it is safe, right? There is actually a myth around plastics and steel that they are not safe or there is something wrong. Of course, there are the wrong kinds of plastic which can be very bad for you, but most plastics are actually safe. But regardless, there was a preference change also, where people thought they want to be more eco-friendly, and all of those kind of things came into play.
Sure.
And since then, our glass business has really grown a lot. Yeah. And now we are entering into the clear glass industry as well, where we are making glasses and tumblers. So traditionally in India, we've had steel ke glass mein pani. Correct. And that has kind of started moving towards more glass now. So traditionally, it is, even if you go to say Tamil Nadu today, they're still steel, right? They've not shifted. So the traditions are so deep rooted within India that the shift is happening but at a slower rate. But in the north and the west of the country, the shift is more dramatic. So I think we've seen that over the last few years, and that is why we've seen a real uptick in the glass business.
Sure. No, that's super interesting. In terms of the eco-friendly bit, if you had to double click on other trends, there's a lot of word on the street, or at least, the VCs are very excited by premiumization of the home. Like the big word is that, okay, everything that is braggable should be premiumized. Right. How have you seen that evolve? Like, how has your customer responded and said that, hey, this is the kind of products we need because we want to brag? Is social a component of what they want to buy because you sell a lot of crockery, etc.? Yeah. What's the insight there?
I think premiumization has been key for us as well. And going forward, I think in our category, it is the word that we're going to be using a lot, right? Because premiumization, people are now, as I said, the preferences have changed. They want to pay for a better product. So whether it's better designs, whether it's more intricate designs on, say, a crockery, or a better looking bottle, whether it's colors, whether it's pastel colors, which picked up. Then there were some other kind of very different graphics on bottles that people now really appreciate. Yeah. So I think all of this has definitely come into play. That is really good for us because that differentiates us from other very unorganized segment as well. Yeah. Because in the plastic houseware business, there is a lot of fragmentation. There are a lot of unorganized players out there. But the molds that we build, the machines that we use, the process that we do is what starts to differentiate us. Of course, there is a cost to all of that. And today the customer is ready, in terms of, so that is why value addition for us has always been the game. It's been something that we want to add a feature on to a certain product to provide a better, overall value to the customer. And I think we've been able to do that over the last few years. We are selling a product at rupees 100 to a 10,000 rupee. So you can see the range of
Very wide.
yeah. So I think and the people and everything has been accepted. So we were skeptical back a few years back that someone who's selling say most products within the 1,000 rupee, 2,000, can we even sell a dinner set at 10,000? But today we are able to do that. So that just shows that there is appetite, at that price point as well. And I think overall going forth, that's how the brand will play out, and we'll evolve. So even there's another example like buckets. There's a lot of usage even today in India. A lot of bucket is still used, though in urban scenarios now that has changed to like showers and all of that. But that is very limited in India. The real India is still uses a lot of bucket. But even there, the preference has changed, right? Okay. Before it was very flimsy, the product. Now they want like dual tone. They want frosty. So these are all value additions that have happened. And we have started to enter just that premium end. So we don't want to be at the bottom end where there is a lot of competition and a lot of unorganized play. We want to be at this level and, evolve this category further.
I love that. I think what I'm hearing is that the Indian consumer is now not functional anymore. They value additional features, additional design, convenience, eco-friendly, they're trendy, they're aspirational, and they value it. And companies like you, which, have been here around for years, but are still serving the customer for what they want, will stand to gain all the you are. So that's a wonderful insight. Let's maybe get to who the customer is for you, right? I'd love to understand from you maybe a gender split, a geography split, a SKU split. That'll just give us more of an insight to, okay, this is where India is shopping in this category.
Right. So I think it's different for us because we've been in so many categories. We're quite
very
diversified.
Yes.
So when we used to manage stationery for brand Cello, I think we were primarily known for that about say a decade back, and it cuts across all demographics, right? Because even a student who's writing his exam to old man in his house would be using a pen, right? And that is why it cut across all demographics and everyone knew Cello for that. But having said that, there was one demographic which was the women or the homemaker who always knew Cello for something else, and that was all our home products and all these kind of the kitchenware product lines. So basically, our major audience even today stands to be the women of the house because they are the real influencers. But having said that, now a lot of young guys also go and buy bottles, right? They also go buy dinner sets or crockeries because a lot of now there are not many joint families. It's becoming more and more a single home, or there's just two or just a couple living in.
Right.
So I think that has changed who the actual buyer is as well. So for us now that opens up another window because now, as you know, India is very young. It's 25 to 35 years. We have like most of our population is within that kind of age group. So I think for us now, they are our target audience. Also in our communication, in our media spends that we do, we now are, speaking more to them rather than just the homemaker as we used to do back in the day. So I think that is an evolving age group that we have found out. Another thing is, of course, the north of India has always been for us a fortress because there is more bragging in the north than say the south or the east. So so every person would carry say like 5 bottles instead of 2 in the south or maybe 1 in the east, right? So I think that still stands to be our largest in terms of the zone. In terms of the actual categories itself, the target audience pretty much is now also moving online. So a lot of it is very so it's a very different demographic there. It's not the same as offline. So offline you have mostly people who go into shops now are limited every day. And now a lot of those people or a lot of newer audience who was just the first time buyers, say in their early 20s, are actually online. So I think we are catching different audiences at different channels as well now. So that again opens up a great opportunity for us.
No, that's lovely. I think it's so diverse yet serving each consumer and from every part of the country. I love that. And maybe we can also now go into channels, right? Because while every new age entrepreneur agrees that first you have to build the brand online and then go offline because it requires capital, it requires margins. You have, of course, you have your own manufacturing, which means better margins, and you have a captive base of distributors who give you access to offline stores, right? Your channel split, I think some 80-85%, maybe more, comes from a bunch of these like offline play.
75%, yeah.
75%. If you can in fact just walk us through offline, online, how much is e-commerce, how does the distributor network work? Because this is an insight that not a lot of people in the new economy get, because we're still evolving to that point. But India buys still from retailers, right? Correct. So talk to us about that.
Right. So I think 75%, as I said, offline, and that's been our biggest base since very long. Though this was almost in the 90s, about a few years ago, because after the advent of e-commerce and quick commerce, and they have taken a part of the share. So about 12% for us comes from e-commerce, about 5% from large format stores, the modern retail of India, and part of it is exports. So I think that's how we are split across all the channels.
Do you do B2B as well?
We do B2B. So B2B also is a part of our channel. We sell to institutions for their promotion purposes, and but we still brand it as Cello. It's not branded as OEM.
Got it.
So yeah, do that channel as well. So that is also about 5 to 6% of our business today.
Nice.
Right. So broadly, these are the channel bases. We cover approximately, we have about 1,000 distributors across India, and they in turn serve about 1.5 lakh retail outlets across channels. Of course, some have lesser outlets, like say a crockery is sold only in about 20-25,000.
Sure.
But stationery is, of course, about more than 1 lakh kind of counters. So I think
and these are all general trade.
This is all general trade. This is purely general trade, and this has been built over years actually. So that is why I think a lot of D2C players today find it more difficult offline. Because it's not a year's game, right? There are relationships that are made. Out of these 1,000 distributors, we would have about almost 800 that have been with us since a decade.
Oh, wow.
So these are all long-term relationships. Out of that, probably 400 would be 20 years or 30 years. Oh, wow. So these are like really old timers. Their second generation, third generation have also entered the business. And that keeps them going as well and helps us grow with them. So I think it's not only us that is growing as a company, it's them. Also who are growing, and I think that is what we take more pride in, because it has to be a win-win for everyone in the channel. If someone is losing out, that is not sustainable. It'll die down today or tomorrow, and I think that for us has been the game changer. Having said that, of course, I feel e-commerce is going to be very big in India. It's already, as I said, 12% of our business, which I feel could go to 20 in the next couple of years.
Nice.
But at the same time, our overall channel growth is good. I think offline, I think for years to come in India, still will be the dominant channel.
Yeah. No, I love that. And in fact, 12% on the base of revenue that you have is significant for the category, and a lot of brands can take inspiration from that. I'd love to also understand if you can go a bit deeper, because again, the insights there are far and few in terms of how to build out a strong distribution network and get in touch with, the retailers, right? Because that is visibility that we don't have. So maybe if there are best practices, or how do you ensure incentives are aligned? How do you ensure retailers are incentivized to further sell your products? What are working capital cycles? However much you can indulge, I think it would be really helpful.
Absolutely. So I think, it's a completely different ballgame when it comes to offline distribution. So all of these guys, basically, they have a certain margin that we have with them, and then they in turn sell to the retailers. But they are not the only sellers. So we have field force on the ground. So we have about 800 people today working on the sales side of things for us, and out of that, about 600 are on ground staff. So these guys actually go to every retailer So every guy covers about 10 to 15 retailers a day, and they have certain targets to achieve, and they serve the distributor. So whatever stock the distributor is carrying, their idea is to sell that or liquidate that with the retailer. And he is also the guy who goes and explains the new product. Explains something that's innovative that's there in a particular product, or how is it different. So the dealer, it can also in turn explain the customer. So in our the dealer is extremely important for us, as he is the influencer, or whatever he wants to sell, he can. Right. So he has a lot of say.
Dealer is the distributor or
no,
the retailer?
The distributor is the guy who we sell to.
Okay.
And the dealer is the guy that distributor. The dealer is basically a retail outlet.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a retail outlet. Yeah.
The final point of touch.
The
with
final
customer.
touch point before the customer.
Got it.
Yeah. So he has a lot of influence, of course, because he can influence a customer at the end of the day, right? So of course there are a lot of incentives that are built in as well. There is a certain margin, and then we run yearly schemes for people who achieve a lot more or achieve the targets, and I think that keeps them driven as well. There are a lot of meets that we do with them because they are the ones facing the customer. So we get a lot of insights from them. So every year we would do approximately about 50 to 60 dealer meets across India. Wow. So it depends on, every year we would pick few. Say we would do a Lucknow, we would do a Delhi, we would do a Bombay, we would do a Indore for that matter. And we go there to understand basically what are the dealers saying, what are the customers saying about the product, and the insights that we gain from them are amazing, because they are the ones who are also because most of them also keep competitor products. So they actually give you the right insight, because a lot of the insights that we get from our own distributors or our sales guys is sometimes biased, right? Because they work for the company. Correct. So I think the insights are brilliant, and these dealer meets really help us. We also reward them at time. We take them to our facilities, show them how the product is made, and I think that opens up a lot of their thought process completely, because they know how to sell. These are all traders, right, at the end of the day, but they don't see the back of the curtain what's happening. Right. And I think that really helps us kind of getting them more aligned with the product, pushing them to sell our product vis-a-vis anything else out there. And we've truly built a very strong relationship with all of them over so many years. Yeah. And I think that's why there is that loyalty with the brand.
Absolutely. No, this is true stakeholder management, right? These are some perhaps the most important benefactor, even because they are the ones selling to customers. Correct. So you have to ensure that trust is well established with them. Absolutely. In terms of these retailers also, is it directly proportional to the revenue that you generate from these regions, or are they heavily indexed on tier 2 cities? What is that split like?
No, so I think most of it comes from these retailers. The tier 1, tier 2 is where we play. So our 80% of our revenue is generated from 80 cities of India. Okay. So we are not really a rural brand. So rural, our share would be hardly anything. But in India, rural is mostly FMCG.
Correct.
After that, people don't have disposable income only to spend on the products that we sell. Yeah. So I think we are restricted to these 80 odd cities in India.
Out of which top 50 cities must be like contributing to a
70%. And then the 30 is about 10%.
Got it. No, that's super helpful. Let's maybe get to now, we've understood product, we've understood customer insight, who the customer is, and then how the distribution works. Right. Marketing is the other piece, right? And considering that so much of your marketing is solved for by the distributor because they are the champions, I was very shocked at dinner to hear that, about like single lower digits is what you spend on marketing. Talk to us about what is the role of marketing when, distribution is sorted? How do you keep up with upcoming times of new age media when you're doing e-commerce? What are spends like? How do you establish trust? You have somebody like an Amitabh Bachchan who's like a brand ambassador, and you've had him for like years now. So how has that also established trust? Would love insights on the marketing branding side now, Gaurav.
Sure. So I think we spend about 2.5% of revenues on marketing. In our segment, that's large enough, because no one else spends that money in this particular segment, and most of it is below the line. So we are actually at the shop level, whether it be in-shop kind of branding or whether it's billboards outside shops, right? That kind of attracts the customer when they go in. So when they see the brand Cello outside, once they go in, they tend to buy the product, right? So that kind of advertising works very well for us. We do some mass media, whether it's TV or print, but that's just once in a while. So that's for impact and recall.
Sure.
So the brand, because the brand is well established, there is only sometime we just have to do it for recall value, so that people still remember the brand and it's on top of their mind. So we use advertising mainly for that perspective. Now with digital, it's amazing, right? Because you are able to target the audience that you want to really, who are your target audience in the first place, and you don't go all over the place. So we use a lot of that now. We use a lot of influencer marketing. We use a lot of social media marketing, which today is, I think everyone does that, and I think it's a boon for brands like us. Also, I think for us, tech itself is a marketing tool. So what we kind of have done in the past few years is that each distributor of ours, we has a certain system that talks to our system, right? So we have complete access to the stocks that he's carrying, what he's selling in the market. Inventory management. So I think that in itself gives us a lot of insight, because we know which retailer he's selling what to, right? We can target a certain retailer and say, okay, provide him certain incentives and work with the distributor. Previously, what used to happen is that we used to sell to the distributor. So we provide approximately about 90 days of credit or 75 to 90 days of credit to most of our distributors. So it's a completely credit driven thing. So before they used to not share their inventory, but now, we've really drilled it to them that it doesn't help. Transparency is important, and transparency will help us know what stocks you're carrying, what you're selling, so we can help you sell more effectively. At the same time, we will produce more, our inventory management at our end will become much better. So I think that has helped us a lot. So I think this is like a hidden marketing, which is really, contributed to kind of getting the right products out there. And, not overloading the channel with products that don't sell. A lot of times that happens, and, companies get stuck and they can never move forward. And, either they have to liquidate it at a crazy price, below cost, and they lose. So in our history, we have never sold below cost.
Oh, wow.
Even a single product, right? We have never had to liquidate. We might have given a discount or two, maybe 2%, 3% discount, but it all sells. So I think that's one thing that sets us apart when it comes to, so that's why we don't have to spend much on marketing.
No, that privilege exists. In fact, I'm curious to understand that a lot of smaller brands have to spend a lot to create brand recall. And that's why their marketing spends are exorbitant as a cost line item, 30, 35, 40%. Have you seen that because, your brand is already established, there's recall, we, know of it either because of the stationery that was existing before or because of the products at our home. Is your e-commerce cost of acquisition lower by market standards? Would you have a comparator?
Absolutely. So compared to D2C brand, it's way lower. And what we also do is because we have a lot of offline presence, we produce different kind of products online. So we don't replicate a lot of as much as possible, right? We do about 90% of that are sold online are iterations of our products that are selling offline, but they are not the same product. So that makes sure that we have enough margin and our margins online are equally good as our offline margins. So and of course, marketing spends compared to a new starter or a D2C brand, of course, we have that advantage.
You'll have a better ROAS for sure.
100%, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Very interesting. This is super helpful. I'm very fascinated by this entire piece. What's the role of something like can you talk about how has it been to work with Amitabh Bachchan? What does that do to the mass consumer, which is, consuming your products, has it in the living room, has it in the kitchen? What is the psychology behind that? Sure.
So Amitabh, I think, is a great personality in himself, adds credibility to every brand that he kind of works with, right? And so Cello always came from a point of view of trust and a good product, right? So the basically the customer always trusted Cello because that Cello will deliver a good quality product, and that has been established with our brand since now decades, right? And Amitabh just added another credibility to the brand, And I think it is synonymous. His name has now become synonymous. We've always, thought about, is this the right move? Is it? But I think he cuts across all demographics. When we started, communicating ourselves as more younger as well, but he can actually play even that, So it's amazing how he cuts across all age groups, and he's been phenomenal. We've had some great interactions with him. I've personally had a couple of interactions with him.
Love that.
And he's a great personality, and the aura that he is, it just adds a halo to the brand.
I can imagine. Are there any campaigns with him that stand out?
Absolutely. So I think we did a steel flask campaign with him, and where he was running on a treadmill and doing all of that. And so this was for a sports bottle. So imagine Mr. Bachchan for a sports bottle, but he's so fit and he can still pull that off, right?
Wow.
And I think that for us did brilliantly because it kind of connected with a lot of people. I got a lot of people talking about it. Even our channel, the whole channel started talking about it. Lovely. And that was one campaign that did fantastically well for us.
Super. No, thanks so much for sharing. This is very helpful. I want to now get to the heavy piece, which is like owning the manufacturing, right? This is also, again, something that is not as well understood because newer brands are not as well capitalized. The appetite to put up a significant capex upfront does not exist. You have 14 factories now. You've recently put up a new factory for the glassware expansion. Talk to us about what it means to run these factories, the kind of exposure from a capital lens to the extent that you can share when you're putting up a factory, and then how is it to get assets? What does recovery look like? Again, I want this to be an explainer for any like new age brand looking to someday, like the aspiration's always that, hey, we want to control our product, we want to set up manufacturing, but we'll get there. Right. So if that is the aspiration, how can we get ahead of it? How can we learn from you?
Sure. So I think for us, it's been manufacturing led, right? Completely. We have never thought about trading a product and creating a brand. Never done that. 80% of our product today also is manufactured within India, and only about 10 to 15% is outsourced for us. So I think we believed in that, and that's why that also is a reason why the margins are good, right? Because you control manufacturing, you control the quality, you control the product line, you control the raw material. So I think that makes a lot of difference as well.
Absolutely.
And you can always have that. That is also a competitive advantage in itself, because someone who's trading is letting go of a lot of margin that he could have had, which would have benefited the business. So for us, definitely it's always been that. We have about 14 factories now today, adding a 15th very soon. It's already added actually, it's started production, but we are going to get sales from there pretty soon, which is the glassware bit. So when it comes to manufacturing, yes, it's not sexy, right? It's not a glamorous thing like product development, colors and SKUs. It is hardcore. I think you need to know what kind of processes you need to master processes, and it's over time that it happens. It's not day one you can get everything right. You're going to have a lot of problems when you're going to start a new factory, right? There are new people that you kind of start hiring during that time, and you're going to lose a lot of those people in the first initial few months because it's too new. Some of them couldn't adjust to the environment. So all of that happens a lot, and those are the real tough moments. I'm having one of them now since I've just started the factory. And so you got to spend time. You got to spend time actually on the shop floor to kind of understand how the product is being made. What are the loopholes or what are the bottlenecks that could create issues later, right? So a clear vision to see what could be problems. So you have to preempt everything in manufacturing, because a lot could go wrong, right? A machine could completely fail. In glass, it's even because it's a 365-day process, continuous, right? So the plant that we started today, it'll run for 10 years without stopping. So anything going wrong, even a single thing could destroy the furnace, and we are melting things at 1500 degrees. So I think something going wrong there is a big possibility, but everything has to be preempted. So I think that also keeps us on our toes when it comes to manufacturing. Manufacturing, my dad uses a very good line. He says, whatever is lost in manufacturing is lost today. because you could have gained that. So if you say buy your raw material more expensive, you've lost profit. If you do a certain process wrong, you've lost today's profit, right? So I think in manufacturing, you have to be very precise. Of course, having a great team helps. But that team gets built over time. You won't get those people on day one. So kind of working with them to develop these factories, adding more automation now, right? Before labor was too cheap in India. It's getting more and more expensive over the years. So we've added a lot of robots in our, in our plastic manufacturing as well. Wherever we see, we try to add automation. Even when we are starting a glass plant, we completely automated it to the T. So basically, the product comes out and it is on a layer and it's packed on the layer. So there is nothing that is offline. So you pack it on the layer and then it's finished. It's a product. So if I would have basically not done that, or I would have made it like a semi-finished good and then packed it, my cost would have gone up by that much percentage. So I think manufacturing is all about gaining more and more efficiencies through automation, through upskilling labor. Also, we manage about 5,000 workers across all our factories. So managing these people is also a challenge because they have their own set of you need to make sure they don't unionize. There are labor laws, PFs and all of that particular piece. And, even if one guy goes and complains, it becomes a huge problem. So you got to be very mindful and careful with all of those things. Pollution laws now in India are getting more and more stricter. Fire safety is becoming more and more of a challenge in factories. So I think creating that environment. So we have always prided ourselves that our factories are, a good place to be. Most factories and big units in India are not friendly enough for the people working there. There are hazardous gases, there are other things, but we've made sure we take care of all of those things. So just taking care of people and giving them a safe and a good environment to work in is beneficial when it comes to manufacturing. But manufacturing is an evolving process. I think we also need to keep up with the trends. So adding newer machines from time to time, being ahead of the curve always with newer technology out there. So we participate in a lot of shows. We attend a lot of machines and equipment shows, and I think that helps a lot. A proper R&D team is also in place there, which needs to continuously work. Though today we might not see any value from it, but maybe 5 years down the line they come up with something. So I think investing in those kind of capabilities within the organization is extremely important. So I think from that perspective, it's great. It's addictive once you start because you want to now then keep multiplying it. That is why we have 14 now and probably we'll have double of them in a few years. So I think if your aspiration is there, I think manufacturing you can do wonders. And that's how, because trading it's more difficult, right? Say you're buying a product from somewhere, it can be replicated so easily. Right? In manufacturing, the good part is you can really create that differentiation from day one. And I think that is the real essence of manufacturing. One should be manufacturing first and then build a brand.
I love that. That's so helpful and very, very nuanced. Do you have any interesting stories from childhood of you being on the shop floor? Like, does anything come to mind?
So I think I was conditioned, Baba. Like from my entire family, conditioned me to be a part of this business, right? And from a very early age, I used to be on the shop floor. I used to go to the factories.
Lovely.
Though everyone used to treat me like so everyone was all the factory managers used to take a lot of care and they were all like family because back then we were a smaller organization. So basically it was everyone knew each other. Even my dad knew pretty much everyone in the factory. That today is a little difficult to know. But so I think I remember basically actually working on the machines on a injection molding. So back then, basically we were doing plastics, right? So a lot of injection molding machines. So kind of understood, molds, understood, the whole process of making it from a very early age. And that kind of got ingrained into my DNA. And today, if you ask me in the middle of the night, how do you work a injection molding or a blow molding process? It's very easy. It comes naturally.
Very interesting. I'm glad I asked that. In terms of just like technicals, in your business, is like sell-through or wastage or any of these a concern? Like what are usual like benchmarking numbers for these?
Right. So I think it's very different for us, because for us it's more value driven than just volumes.
Okay.
Right. So it's not sell through as such. It's more value addition, and numbers don't matter, because say for example, as I gave you an example that we used to sell a plastic bottle, then we added a steel inner, so the ASP kind of went up, right? So I think for us it's more value driven, and not that much volume driven. In terms of wastages, there are no real wastages even in plastic. Everything is recyclable.
Right.
So the plastic that we use is all recyclable, and we use about 90% virgin raw material, and just add that 10% of wastage that we get from the other products, we add it into the raw material. In glass, there is zero wastage, because whatever comes out goes in back into the furnace. So I think in terms of wastage from an environmental perspective, we are pretty green from that perspective. Though plastic cannot be green, or a glass in itself is not green, right? Because you waste a lot of energy to get that product in, or anything for that matter in this world is not really green. It can be less or more. So from that perspective, so wastage for us is not a very big deal. In terms of so unsold inventory, as I said, we don't have much. It's always a sell through. We never sell below. We've never sold below cost. So I think that's been we've been blessed that we haven't had to do that.
We hope that's going to be the case
hopefully,
for
touch wood.
decades ahead. Yes. But no, this is very helpful. Now we've also covered manufacturing. I think the piece that's perhaps left is, let's say, new product development and ancillary categories, right? Like a company at your scale, I think what's very interesting is public companies have to maintain this constant predictability of growth. So because the retail investor wants to know ki it's going to grow 10, 15%, 20, 25% year on year.
Right.
Also, you have to show expansion, growth pathways, right? So if you can walk us through what the internal thought behind new product development is, and ancillarily, are there adjacencies that you look at? We see a lot of companies being built in the kitchen category, in the new age space. There are companies like Atomberg, which are going into, again, kitchen as well. They're doing mixers, juicers. What's the plan for Cello?
Right. So I think when we look at any category, so I think we're a company that has always grown adjacently, horizontally, and we don't push a particular product line too far, where after some time it's just giving me incremental revenue and lesser profits, right? So we don't believe in that. So we've always grown adjacently. That is why we got into the glass business. That is why we now are getting into the clear glass business. So I think we're a company that always grows that way, and we'll continue to do so, because that is sustainable over the longer period of time. Though there can be a great, in the future, maybe our other products can do very well, but today, say some of the product lines are only, or the industry overall is only growing at 10-12%. So how do you beat that? You beat that only with adjacent product lines. So I think with us going IPO, with us being public, I wouldn't say pressure, I would say it's a good thing, because it kind of pushes you into different avenues that you previously were never thinking, right?
Yeah, the responsibility of being public owned.
And it pushes in the right direction. Like I never felt that the IPO kind of pushed us into a realm that we were having. It's not a burden. I would say it pushes you in the right direction. It forces you to govern better. It forces you to kind of think out of the box. And I think that's what happened with us, right? And I think it's been a great boon for us, the IPO that we've had. Apart from that, when we talk about D2C brands, I think we learn a lot from them as well, right? There are a lot of products, because a lot of these new age brands pick up on trends a lot quicker than us. We are, blinded sometimes by our own distribution, by our own dealers, but they are actually having more customer insights at times, and they enter some niches. So we pick on those niches as well, and we start emulating them some places, especially online, right? Online is as I mentioned, a completely different set of people that we are selling to. So I guess that really helps us. And we have had a few successes as well. We've launched a few product lines that have done extremely well. that our D2C brand was probably doing. So we learned from them. I think we should not underestimate any of these guys. These guys are doing fantastic work. And I feel, we should always learn from each other. So I think in that sense, we've been evolving as a company. A lot of new age thought has come into the company also, because a lot of our new hires have been very young people in their 20s, early 20s, and they bring a very different perspective. So I guess, all of those learnings have really made us kind of new age as a brand, and kind of you need to redefine the brand every few years constantly. And that's what we've been doing, right? So one good part about our organization, I feel, is that we kind of get in and out of product lines. So if we feel that a product line is not doing well, or it's commoditized, or we pushed the limits, then we sometimes get out of it as well. Right? If it's not adding to our bottom lines, if it's really, it's not it's just incremental sales. So we gradually get out of that line. And I think as it's important to get into newer lines, it's very important to get out as well. And I think one of the examples of that was stationery for us back in 2015, when we completely exited. And we exited at our peak, right? We were the market leaders back then. And we saw stationery at that particular point in time. In hindsight now, I feel maybe that move was, maybe we read it a little wrong in terms of how it would grow in the future. But at that time, it was about 2 to 3 years that there was zero growth in the line. And we thought, we are at a good, revenue, we are market leaders, why not exit? And we got a super exit, right? So I think exiting brands at the right time, exiting spaces is extremely important as well.
Yeah. No, I think it's very interesting, very nuanced, and a lot of people, when I was preparing for the episode, a lot of people still sometimes recognize Cello for the stationery brand, but when you point out the bottles, the glass bottles especially, like I was telling you, or the crockery sets or the tiffins, I think it just like rings a bell again. Those are distinct, and your stationery brand is now something, it's called Unibox.
It's called Unomax.
Yes. So that's pretty interesting. In terms of NPD, are there examples? I remember, I think you at the home only, I saw this bottle, the Stanley bottle, right? How did that come about? Are you following, because these trends are evolving so fast, what is the story behind some of those?
So I think we picked from the West as well, right, at times. And Stanley became a huge hit in the US very quickly. They went from $75 million to about $750 million in 2 years or something. And that was mind-boggling.
That one ad.
That one ad and the product as well. So I think, and the product was, though their gimmicks work, as I said, a lot more, but in India, there is a set of people that it works with. And I think we launched that, recently, about 3-4 months back, and it became an instant hit. So more so online than offline, because I think we reach through the right audience through the online channel for that particular product line. So again, these trends, there are always influences. There are always, we take inspiration also from a lot of these other brands in the West as well. So our category is a trendy category, right? You need to come up with new product lines. You need to come up with aesthetically better bottles or aesthetically better tiffins, or recently there's a rage in bento tiffin boxes now, right? So that again keeps on changing. So now people are shifting towards that. So it's an ever evolving category, and I think just being on top of things in terms of trying to understand those, how the preferences are changing is extremely important for us. And as I said, through dealer meets, to distributor meets,
you get those insights.
We kind of understand these in depth.
Are there any more examples, or maybe 1 or 2, where specific product was launched because of a specific recent insight or a trend or a design or some color that worked?
Right. So I'll give you, before I get onto that, I have a interesting, back in the day when we had just launched pens. So why was stationery launched, or why were pens launched? My grandfather was just traveling one day, and he just came across a pen. So he had a habit of weighing everything, right? So he put it on a weight scale, all the different plastic parts that were inside, because we were already into plastics back then. So he put it on that, and he said, okay, this costs this much to make. This is the raw material. This is the process. This is the ink that would go inside, and this is my selling price. So he said, okay, I can make it at 50 paise and sell it at 2.5 rupees. So perfect. Let's get into this. And
Nice.
that's how he pushed my uncle to get into the stationery line. He was completely against it. Right? My father was like, why do you want to get into stationery when we are into household product line?
Yeah.
But he said, this is a fantastic product. Why don't we get into it? We understand plastics. We understand how it's processed. So I think back then things were, like this because India was a wide open space, right? In the 1990s, we had just opened up as an economy,
Right.
and things were so new to India. But today, everything we look more towards the West when it comes to product lines. So a lot of things evolve in the West, and then they come into India. So if you see, say, a Lock and Lock, right, as a brand, it's a Korean brand, and it basically was using plastic containers all this while. Last few years, they turned everything into glass. Right. So again, there was a change in preference that happened in the West, and now India is starting to pick that up. So a lot of things now we borrow from the West as well. And again, that is very important to localize it though.
Yeah.
Right. You need to localize the entire product as my father had done it with the hot pot.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I think this makes a lot of sense. I think the final piece of the puzzle is maybe in terms of, let's say, the people itself, right? And sometimes, again, outside in, it can look like family-run businesses run like, adjectives like lala businesses, etc. are used, which is evidently not the case in your case because, you're growing very steadily year on year for the last like 5+ years, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
Talk to us about what has that meant, right? Like, how did you go from, let's say, a family-run business to like a professionally run business? As especially you were thinking about the IPO, what did that entail from a professional management lens? And as you, I think, briefly pointed out as well, I think the challenge for you as a brand will be to stay relevant, right? Because there will be a lot of challenger brands, a lot of motivated people who will have focused insights, who will come into the market and challenge players like you because you are the almost incumbent now, if one may say.
Right.
So how do you still stay ahead of the curve?
So I think in terms of even today or even before the IPO, we pretty much ran the company, as a professional setup, right?
Sure.
Though we are kind of CEOs in different fields because we run different businesses, all three of us. But eventually we can be replaced. So it's not that we cannot be replaced, and we would like ourselves to be replaced at some day, right?
Sure.
My father and my uncle, maybe 5-7 years, they would be hands-on. But after that, they would want a setup that runs by itself. So I think it's more of a choice because we enjoy it. I think we are doing it by choice, running some functions, though a lot of functions we don't even look at today. So when it comes to, say, the operations part in the factories or the sales bit, it's pretty much professionalized. What we are really involved in is the product development piece, because we feel that is the heart of everything.
Sure.
So I think if you have a great product, selling is not a challenge, right?
Sure.
So I think we've chosen to take parts on our plate. And eventually, of course, we want to replace that as well and get into more strategic always and see how we can grow into either, say, adjacent categories, look at, say, inorganic growth, look at, other opportunities within this space and grow the brand even further.
Sure.
So that's one bit of it.
A similar extension, right?
Yeah.
Like what kind of talent do you hire, perhaps, if you can further go into?
Sure.
I think that'll give us a lens to how to, like, and you were telling me that, there are 1,000 employees now. It's like a part of the corporate team, and this is excluding the fleet on the street, excluding the factory team. Right. So what is the thought process there? Like, how do you, as a, for the lack of a better word, old company, behave like a new company in terms of talent?
Right. So I think we have pretty much grown from within. So at the senior levels, we have never had executives from outside.
Okay.
So I think that keeps the ethos and the culture very strong, right? And we have had people for 30 years now working in the company.
Oh, wow.
So very, very old guys.
Wealth of knowledge, but.
A wealth of knowledge, right? Yeah. But you also need new age.
Young blood.
With it, young blood, right? Because the mix is fantastic, right? And it's always not easy to get them all aligned. So you work in spaces, or you work sometimes in silos, and sometimes it pays off. So for example, my e-commerce team is all in their 20s and 20s. So wherever needed, it's young blood. Wherever, wealth of knowledge or wisdom is needed, or say in a manufacturing setup, you don't need young guys. You need experienced guys.
Yeah.
Who've gone through all the issues that have come in the plant, who know everything about it, and who can run the factory. And I think in different spaces you need different kinds of people. And I think we've got that balance right. Going forth, I think I would always want it to be like that. But a lot of the older guys will retire.
Sure.
But the good part is we have a lot of mentors within our organization who now have gotten into a space where they're in their almost 57, 58 years. They have 3-4 years more in the organization. And now they're training the second line. And I think that's beautiful because in a lot of spaces, people feel insecure. People feel that, oh, now my days have ended and all of that. But that's not there because they still have that sense of ownership, that they own the company and they truly belong. Because anything, you start loving anything if you have been with that particular person or a thing for like even say 2 years. So these guys have been with us for like ages now. And a lot of them, right? Say out of those 1,000 people, about 300-400 people are very, very old, right? And I think those guys are now turning mentors.
Nice.
And it's a beautiful transition. It's beautiful to see how they're training the second generation. And I think that culture we really want to maintain.
I love that. I think that's super, super helpful to understand. This has been a great explainer on the business. I think personally, I've learned so much more. And maybe we can also finally talk about the private equity piece, right? So a year before going IPO, you raised investment from ICICI Venture to the tune of some 350-360 crores, if I'm not wrong. And then a year later, you went public. Now, this is again as an aspiration for many, many founders out there. Hopefully, everybody who builds a product, establishes a brand, wants to go IPO someday. What can you share about the private equity raising experience and then the IPO experience that was, that can help us get your vantage point? What was the process like? How was the feeling to, get listed on the NSE? What does that mean?
Right.
Would be lovely to understand that, Gaurav.
Sure. So I think the private equity guys with ICICI, we have a fantastic relationship today. They started chasing us in 2018 and we started talking back then. And it took about almost 3.5 years, to start the whole process. So initially we were not really wanting to do the IPO because we thought, why do an IPO? What is the point? We don't need the cash, so that was the whole perspective back then. But with ICICI coming in, they kind of helped us change that perspective and look at the broader, scenario where they brought in, a lot of experiences from their past, past companies where they had invested and how those really kind of exponentially grew from there. So I think IPO gives you two things. One is access to capital becomes easy when you really want it, though we did not need it or we don't need it today. But it really helps you overall, to kind of grow the company exponentially if there is an opportunity. Also, it kind of helps you govern better. It kind of pushes you in the right direction. So I think those two pieces for us, resonated with us when they spoke to us. And I think that is the reason why we wanted to do it. It also unlocked value for the family as well, because all of the proceeds that came from the IPO was an OFS.
Yeah.
So there was no primary in the company, and it kind of rewards the people who have built it as well. So and I think
decades.
Yeah. Sorry?
Across decades,
exactly. And I think that's also an important piece, because once you have that, you only focus on kind of building the brand further, and after a certain while, wealth doesn't matter. It's what you build and what you want to achieve further in your organization. And I think they were a great help to us in the whole IPO process. I think without them, it would be a longer period, a long struggle. I think they got us the right bankers, got us the right lawyers, introduced us to the right people. So I think their connections and their network really helped us. Throughout the way, they were with us, at every juncture, telling us what to do, what not to do, how to talk, what not to reveal, also to, because you can't reveal certain things and all of that. So I think that really helped us in the whole bit. And and they're still on board today with us.
Lovely.
And they really believe in us as a company. They believe in the three founders as well. So I think that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, and that's a great relationship to just carry forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic relationship, and going forward, it also for other investors also it's a very it's a morale boosting thing.
Sure.
Where if your PE is still on board, so that really
Boosts confidence.
Boosts confidence. Yeah.
Sure. Well, that's super helpful. If you had to summarize pointers for new age entrepreneurs in terms of what does it mean to get a company IPO ready from a, let's say profitability lens, or let's say structured growth lens, or from a governance lens, I would love to hear what your thoughts are, so that we can set a benchmark from your vantage point as to this is IPO worthy, and this is when you should, take your company public.
Right. So I think in terms of IPO, most companies should look at it from an angle where they really need the money to grow the business, because it's also a lot of responsibility. When you go IPO, you are now responsible for a lot more people apart from yourself, right?
Of course.
So I guess it's important that a founder kind of realizes that. Second of all, does the product have the capability to go there, right? Or is it just a gamble? So you got to be very clear in that sense, because now it's not your money. You're going to gamble with other people's money. So you should not be gambling, right? You should have a thought process where you're putting in your best. Of course, things can fail, and no entrepreneur should be, for failing, no one should be just like put on the axe. But at the end of the day, you should have conviction in what you're doing. And I feel, if you truly believe in your product, you truly believe, or in a service, then I don't think any investor would have any problem backing you. So I think and everyone sees through. All of these investors are, seasoned. They know in and out about. They can tell a good from a bad company, and you should put the right, foot forward with good intentions, I feel.
Yeah, no, I think that summarizes it really well. This has been amazing. I think we've covered a lot of ground on the business. I'd love to now, as we conclude, I'd love to have a couple of questions personally on your persona, so that we can understand the person behind the business as well. In your case, Gaurav, you were telling me, before this, before you joined the business, you've been in Boston, you did your undergrad there, you were in investment banking for a bit, you did your let's say MBA in UK as well. What were some of those formative years before the business like? What are some of your earliest influences like? This is all things beyond business. We'd love to understand, so that we can know what is the character that influences the business persona.
Right. Sure. So I think, back then I had, as I told you, I was kind of conditioned for the business.
Yeah, you knew this would happen.
I knew this would happen, but I was kind of a rebel, right? Back then, because that's why I got into investment banking and finance. I was like, no, I'm not going to do this, right? So back then I was like, I'll go to Boston. I really enjoyed my time there. It's a beautiful city. I made some of my best friends during that time, and they are still one of my closest, right? And so we have great memories together, and I feel having gone through that journey, having kind of gone into investment banking, and then I suddenly realized that this is not for me. And the business back home is more lucrative. It makes a lot more sense. There is more opportunity there. Because investment banking can be very, very crazy, right? You got to put in a lot of hours, and it's a lot of hard work, right? More than hard work, it's not something that I enjoyed. I enjoyed it the first 2-3 months, but then it gets too monotonous and too rigorous. So I guess after that, I kind of decided to come back and join the business. But even in the early, when I just started off, I kind of interned with my uncle for a bit, kind of tried to understand the business from his lens. And I think So I think learning has always been something that I'm a very curious character that way. So I like to learn things, like to pick people's minds as to how things are happening. And I used to love watching the series, how it's made and all of that. So I think that's where the interest in manufacturing also came up. So I think those years when like I was made to watch it initially as a kid, no one wants to watch how it's made. But when my parents pushed me into it, I really developed a keen interest. And I think that's one of the reasons why also that I've been successful in manufacturing, because when you start loving the products you manufacture, that's when you can truly get into the nitty-gritties, try to make the best product that you actually can. So I guess those years were spent wisely, I guess.
I love that. No, that's super nice. How would your friends describe you?
How would my friends describe me? So I think initially in my early years I was very introverted as a person. So my friends know who know me from then kind of would know that. But of course changed a lot as a person. And I was very geeky as well. Was completely into my studies and was kind of a bookworm. But eventually that side also changed as I went. So I think for me, my undergraduate studying in Boston was a real great exposure, because that opened up my personality overall, because that introverted nature kind of went away a little bit, came out of my shell. And I think for me, it was very important to do that. And I'm glad that if I would have probably been in India, probably that would have never happened, right? And I'm glad that I kind of went abroad, studied, and did all of that. So yeah.
Super. No, that's lovely to hear. This question often brings out, the two-sided nature of like somebody as well, because friends often know you for your like original self, but the transformation is just so amazing to witness as well. This has been such a pleasure. My second last question is, like, I often put the person on the spot and ask, if you weren't doing this, what would an alternative life look like? What would that be in your case?
In my case, I probably would have been an athlete.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
what
because
sport?
I was really good at sports from a very young age. So played tennis, played squash.
That's why I paddle as well.
That's why I paddle now, because paddle is the new game. And I think I've always played a game, right? Throughout my life. And I think I've always been good at it. So I pick up games very quickly. I have that natural athleticism that's needed. So probably would definitely play a sport. Played cricket for a while when in my younger times, and was good at it. So any sport that I picked up, I can
You're telling me about skiing as well.
Skiing, yes. So skiing in Boston, there was nothing else to do. So skiing, yeah. So got into that, and every year now I go skiing as well. So I think in terms of sports, would definitely have been an athlete.
Love that. I love that. One of the questions I also ask is, I've been the one asking you questions, but are there any evident questions that you are, asking yourself these days? Like it could be business related, it could be life related. We spoke a bunch before this. So any of those, like what are reflections that you're talking to about yourself?
I think, I think we all evolve over the years. And I think for me, I've evolved a lot from what I was in my formative years, then, my studies and all of that. And, every year you try to become a better version of yourself. And I think currently for me, it's more, like my dad is a very heavy PR guy. Like you would meet him and you would fall in love in 2 minutes, right? He has that aura. So I kind of pick up on those kind of things where I say, okay, now, of course, I have a lot to do in my business today. Most of my time gets spent here. Most of my time is in operations. And so these are all crazy things that you get into, and sometimes you get and that's where I would like to change those aspects now, meet more people, kind of go out there a little bit more.
I love that.
And I think that really helps you grow faster. Because you start looking at different perspectives. When you and manufacturing can really do that to you actually, because you really get into things and then you kind of get stuck for a while. So I think in the next few years I would like to change that about myself, or evolve that part of my my nature, So I think that's something that I reflect on. That's something that I would, change in the coming years.
Got it.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I think the world deserves to know much more about you and
Right.
learn from you. So I'm guessing that's going to be really, really great for everybody consuming and being a benefactor of those interactions, like I was today. I loved catch up before as well, and it's been such a pleasure. I also want to understand maybe the more human side, and we were discussing you're the dad of two great twins, and
Yeah.
you are like the 3.5 years old. What's that like? Like, what is the role of family mentorship? You have, of course, your business role models are within the family. What has that been like for you? We discussed briefly, of course,
Sure.
what that is
Right.
like, but now that you're a father, how does the world change for you?
Right. I think I've been blessed with two twins, one boy and a girl. So that happened.
I love that.
That's a great thing. It happened in one go. So that's fantastic. And it's so amazing to be with them. It's such a different feeling. When they just get born, for a father it changes nothing. But when they grow now, so to 2-3 years, they start talking to you. It suddenly, gets your heart very warm. Like now, it suddenly changes how you look at things. You first give priority to them. So all of that in my life has changed a lot after them. Of course, for me, role models, as you rightly said, has been within my family, whether it's my grandfather or my father. So the kind of discipline that they have at work, or the kind of, my father is a very big philanthropist as well. So we run a foundation called the Cello Foundation, and a lot of charity goes into a lot of places. But it's not only charity. He actually goes there and does it. So it's one is you just give money, but other is actually to run a hospital, run a school. So he spends a lot of time doing that. And he is someone who is really like very, very large-hearted. So I think that is something that really is appealing about him. And that aura is something that I would love to, be in his place in the next few years.
I love that. That is so nice to hear, all of it. This has been great. I think the last question, Gaurav, and this is a stereotypical one, but I ask everybody this. The idea is to take the guests down memory lanes. In your case, maybe let's go 10 years back, and the day you were joining the family business, Cello, and you knew you had to come to this. What would you tell yourself back then, right? And this is not about, this is just to condense the learnings. It's not at all about regrets. It's about, hey, with the benefit of insight and hindsight that you have today, what could you tell yourself that would benefit you that day, and by extension hopefully help us condense the learnings that you've gathered through 10 years?
I think I would tell myself to make more mistakes.
Okay.
So I think if I would have failed more, I would have learned more.
Oh, lovely.
So I think I of course I did fail on the way, right? There were a lot of small failures. Fortunately, not very large failures. So I think those failures have really taught me a lot more. Through all our, childhood, we are told not to fail, right? We are told that, it's wrong to fail. You cannot fail in an exam. So I think it gets kind of ingrained in your DNA. And I think that is something that I've learned throughout the years, that I've learned from my failures. And when you fail once, it's rare that you fail the second time. Right, because you've already learned not to fail. So
correct.
So I think I would tell myself to fail more.
Awesome. That is such a great way to end. I think failures and celebrating failures so that you can learn is such a phenomenal way to end the conversation. This has been such a pleasure, Gaurav. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I have learned a ton about the business, about how a large-scale operation like yours runs, and you're so kind, humble, and it's been such a pleasure to do this. Thank you so much. I'm confident all of the listeners that have made it thus far will have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Hello. If you made it this far, you've probably watched the entire episode. And if you've done that, I'm really grateful. I and my team try to put in a lot of effort to ensure that we can bring the best quality content to you. So if you liked the episode, if you watched it thus far, my request to you is to share it with people, to subscribe to the channel, and to ensure that we can keep growing. We are everything and anything only because of you, our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll keep bringing to you amazing content. Cheers.